Hi and welcome back to our channel, where we recap your favorite video games. Today we are going to recap an action shooter game called Max Payne 3. So without further ado, let's begin. The game begins with a flashback into Max's old life, a retired NYPD officer who had grown fond of drinking and slumping in his apartment, wasting his life away before being hired as a gunman, to kill and survive and make a living. Max's story about how he had gotten to this point begins in Sao Paulo at a party, where he was hired by Raul Passos, a former NYPD officer, to protect Rodrigo Blanco, a local businessman, and his family, but things go south, and their party was crashed by masked goons. Fabiana, the wife of Rodrigo, was in grave danger, and Max goes after the goons and manages to save her just in time, but Rodrigo was captured, a big prize for the goons that weren't willing to let go without a fight. Max chases after them through the basement parking, fighting his way through, and is just in time to find Rodrigo being taken away in a blue discreet van. Max saves the life of a shaken-up Rodrigo, killing the Commando Sombra, and gets home. A couple of days later, Max was back at the job escorting a drunken Fabiana, her sister, and Rodrigo's dipshit brother Marcelo to a nightclub in a heli. Max, constantly annoyed by Marcelo and drunk, turned his attention when the nightclub gets ambushed. The chase begins yet again. Max gets cut off by chained doors but makes his way to the rooftop and calls for help, figuring they were the same party crashers, and gets on the heli with Marcelo beside him. Max kills the goons on the rooftop and goes after Jovana and Fabiana, with their chances of survival being low. Jovana is found, but Fabiana was missing, and Max was up for some bad time. Back at the Blanco headquarters, tensions rose for Rodrigo and his family. Rodrigo questions the possible motives of the kidnappers, and Max offers to deliver the ransom money along with Raul. Together they go to the planned meet at a stadium, but as Max hands the ransom money, he gets shot by a sniper rifle and stumblingly makes his way to safety. Their chances of survival are slim, but Raul fights his way through and gets Max some first aid to cover his wounds, and they survive the attacks. Max, now feeling better, fights alongside Raul. They find out about a third party looking for the ransom who were professionals and slowly tackle them. The stadium had turned into a fighting arena with Max and Raul looking for their money. Soon enough, Max tackles the sniper, finds their guy carrying the bag full of money, and chases after him. Max tackles his enemies through the VIP lounge and makes his way to the upper stands using an elevator. With Raul covering his back, Max fights, but soon enough Raul runs out of ammo and relies on Max to cover him while he makes a run for it. Raul heads for the chopper to prepare it for their escape while Max deals with a rival sniper in the IT tower. Max and Raul were in big-time trouble now, having lost $3 million in ransom money and defeated. They make a run for the chopper. Sitting in the chopper, he thinks about the time Raul had found him in a bar drunken and ready to fight Tony, a jerk from New Jersey who was just a kid when he was saved from getting his brains blown out by a gun. Raul and Max have gone to the same academy together and catch up over some drinks, but get interrupted soon enough when Tony, along with his friend, comes back waving his gun in their face. Max was annoyed and without thinking straight shoots Tony, marking himself for a liability, and that's where the trouble began. Max and Raul together fought their way out of the bar but ran into trouble outside with more goons on their path. They hid in his apartment, but trouble followed them with Anthony, the father of the boy, giving orders to ambush his apartment. They fought back, making their way through the rooftops and wrecked buildings and abandoned workshops before getting on the street and finding an empty corner to lie low. Now left with no choice but to work for Raul, Max had joined him. Fast forwarding to the current day to tackle the situation, Raul and Max head on a speedboat to River Teat, where Fabiana was suspected to be held captive by a group called Croc Chapredo. They head for the harbor. Max, still holding himself guilty about the pickle they were in, sneakily starts looking for any signs of Fabiana in the rust-up buildings. Their suspicions about Fabiana turn out to be true, and Max finds out about her location on a surveillance camera but can't make it there in time. Fabiana gets transferred by her captives, closely followed by Max, who, guns blazing, runs across docks in vain trying to save her, but they were always one step ahead of him and take her on a boat with them, leaving Max in a rubble in the sea. Raul arrives at his aid on the speedboat, and they start chasing after them. Raul drives the boat while Max tackles the Croc Chapredo at their tail, and they finally get closer to Fabiana's boat, but more crew of Croc Chapredo come in their way, slowing them down. Close enough to catch her, their boat finally gives away and Fabiana slips through Max's finger for the second time. Max, fully demotivated, slips back to his old drinking habits and slumps in his apartment when Raul visits him, telling him the boss had summoned them. Rodrigo, after constant failures, was losing his mind, and he's comforted by a policeman there named Becker and his family. Max stays behind in his office, and as they are talking, armed men enter the building. The protection system had failed, and Max once again goes out of his way to protect Rodrigo, locking him in his office. Max clears the path for the IT technician to reboot the security system, killing Croc Chapredo in his way. The security system gets back online, and Rodrigo was safe, but Max had to sweep the whole building to clear the perimeter. He heads to the lobby, but lo beholds, more Croc come in his way, attacking. Max deals with them and heads up to check on Rodrigo, but he was late. Rodrigo was shot dead on his desk, a bullet to his head. Max picks up a picture frame of Fabiana, his wife, and accidentally ends up dropping it, only to find an explosive rigged below his desk. He jumps from the balcony as the whole building explodes. A beaten-up Max finds his way out through the scorching fire and fighting trapped Croc in the building. He stumbles through the rubble of concrete and broken glass to find an alive Croc member and interrogates him about the whereabouts of Fabiana. He gets back to his apartment all beaten up and decides to turn his life around, or at least head in that direction. A sober Max with his head shaved calls Victor, Rodrigo's brother, informing them he was going after Fabiana. He heads into the local area where he's led by a kid to a street party, but being an American, he stood out and got robbed by the locals. Max, now lost, sees a bar ahead and decides soberness was of no use to him. Heading into the bar, he asks for a telephone, hoping to call Passos, but instead comes across a local policeman, Wilson da Silva. Silva knocks some sense into Max, showing him the bigger picture about the Rodrigo family and the truth about Croc Chapredo and their leaders. Wilson guides him to go uphill if he wants to find Fabiana and leaves, but Max, almost like a bad habit, gets into a bar fight and runs hiding in a ravine, shooting more crew of the Commando Sombra. He finds his way through a basement only to rock up on some teenagers trying to harass women, and his consciousness getting good of him, kills them all. He heads for Serrano, thinking he would take him by surprise, but he was expecting him. Max faces fierce competition but fights back, making his way to Serrano's compound, but finds 3 captives instead of 1. Jovana and Marcelo are also on the ground with a bag of money near them, having made a dumb decision, but Max, now not backing out, makes an even dumber move of confronting them. Fabiana gets shot in the head while Jovana and Marcelo get taken away. Max stands there with a gun pointed at his head, and there is a flashback to his past where he was standing on the grave of his late wife in New Jersey and gets ambushed by more guys of DeMarco. It seemed like Marco had placed a bounty on their head and the place was swarming with an army. Max and Raul both fight back and almost end up being caught, but Max somehow gets them out before they finally find a phone, and Raul contacts for help to his acquaintances in the Queens. Max gets back to reality with a foreigner shouting in his face. He tackles him, takes his gun, and gets out only to find the place swarming with cops, having become a war zone. Max finds Marcelo and Jovana being taken away and fights off the raiding cops following them. He discovers Marcelo and Jovana are about to meet their death when he interrupts, only managing to save Jovana in time. Marcelo gets burned alive, and Max and Jovana head to the city to blend with the crowd, where he finds that Jovana was pregnant with Raul's child. They hide in some broken-down buses but get attacked, and Max manages to save them. Max, determined to save Jovana's life, takes shelter in a nearby building and deals with more enemies and making way through some offices before finally getting on the street. Max directs Jovana to drive a bus while he shoots more mercenaries before getting rammed in the side. They go crashing into a wall. Max gets Jovana out and she gets to safety and fights back, only to find Raul abandoned him, but Wilson comes to his aid. In an empty parking lot, Wilson raises suspicion about Raul, and Max, leaning on a rail, thinks about their time together in Panama. A few months back in Panama, Max, half-drunk, watches as Marcelo parties on the boat with Raul near them. Raul advises him to take it easy and go take some rest, and Max follows, getting to his bunker and passing out, only to find himself in the middle of another crisis. The boat gets hijacked, and Max slowly makes his way up, killing soldiers, and finds himself in the engine room, which gets set on fire. Max must think quickly with the oxygen depleting fast and shuts off the engines to get out in the open, finding they were indeed in Panama Canal. He kills some soldiers and finds Passos and Marcelo together near a car. Max persuades Raul to come with him and they look for Daphne. They fight with the paramilitaries only to find a pile of dead bodies of the crew members. Max had never given a thought to this, and now the reality was apparent in his face with the truth about Victor and his two brothers and their money laundering. He starts questioning himself and the truth about Raoul when Wilson asks him to jump back in the car and he's said to investigate the Imperial Palace Hotel. He investigates further and goes up using an elevator and kills some paramilitaries to find discreet documents stating that U, F, E, and Crocho were in fact in ties. Max continues further finding Serrano and others on stretchers in a pathetic state and goes on top by climbing through the elevator shaft. Max unravels the mystery of the hotel, finds a doctor and deduces illegal experiments that had been conducted on those people and they were farming their organs, but before he could do something about the doctor, Serrano in his terrible state shouts something at the doctor and goes to kill him. Max leaves his fate to Serrano and finds some C4 in the arsenal there. Deciding to bring the place down once and for all, he plants C4s on different pillars supporting the building, but more paramilitaries come crawling in his way. Max deals with them and continues his venture and confronts Senor Neves about his business, holding the controller in his hand before pressing the button. The whole building shakes and Max takes cover, slowly killing Neves's paramilitaries, but Neves catches him lacking and points his gun at him, smiles, but ends up shot dead by Raoul, who came to Max's aid and saves him. They both fly off the crumbling building in Raoul's heli, and Max is bid farewell by Jovana and Raoul as they leave to start a new life. Max, now directed by Wilson, heads to put an end to Mr. Becker, the man behind you, F.E. Max gets himself into the precinct by getting arrested and is taken in for interrogation and fools the officers into pinning them to the ground. From there he slowly makes his way through, killing dozens of police officers and crossing hurdles before he tries to save himself from tear gas, stumbles upon a surveillance tape of Rodrigo's office, confirming his suspicions about their involvement in his death. Max comes face to face with Bachmeier, Becker's right-hand man, and chases after him through the arsenal before coming back up and killing more police officers. Bachmeier meets his end and Max goes after Becker, but when confronting him finds Victor with a gun pointing at his head. In this pickle, Max tries to take his gun but gets tossed and Victor and Becker manage to escape. Max's best guess was they would try to fly somewhere safe, so he scouts the Piratininga airport. Max fights his way through Becker's forces before finally managing to nail him down, but Victor had managed to get on the plane. Wilson arrives at his aid, and they chase him down in his car. Max destroys his plane and everything that came in their way with a grenade launcher before finally catching Victor as well. Wilson begs Max to let him rot in a jail cell and Max leaves him to Wilson. In the last scene, Max on his holiday in Bahia sees on the news the end of Victor, who hanged himself in his jail cell, and all the scandal about human trafficking is revealed to the world. Max smiles as he walks across the beach, the bright sun shining, and the game ends here. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. We will see you in the next one.